Hi everyone, I'm Nadia, and in today's video I'm making a fail. Not intentionally, of course, but while working with resin, things don't always go as planned. But that's just part of the process, and you do learn a lot from mistakes. There can be numerous factors as to why something didn't exactly go the way that you had it planned in your head. So I'm going to be showing you guys what I think I did wrong and how I managed to save this set of coasters. After my resin is mixed together well, I start off by pouring some clear resin into my coaster molds. As usual, I'll have affiliate links in my description, so if you're interested in purchasing any of these products that I'll be using in this video, make sure to check that out. I do my best to make sure that there is an even amount in each mold, and then I pour the little bit that's left over into smaller cups for my pigments. I use a torch gun to pop any air bubbles in the resin, and I'm moving it very quickly so that I don't burn my resin or my silicone molds. The first pigment I'm going to be using is Just Resin's pigment paste in the shade Titanium White, and I make sure to mix it well in the container before I take a small amount onto my wooden stick to then mix into my resin. And I think that this is where I made my first mistake. Although I did take a small amount of pigment onto my wooden stick, in proportion to the amount of resin I had in the cup, which was a very small amount, it was probably too much pigment. This can weigh down the resin, and in result, the pigmented resin can sink down into the bottom of the mold in blobs. I was aiming for a gray pigment, so I added a tiny bit of Color Fun Deluxe's black pigment to mix into the white pigment to achieve a gray color. Next, I'm going to be using gold leaf flakes, and I added some into a small cup with a small amount of resin and mixed that all together. And I decided to add a little bit of DuPont's Heisenberg Blue Pearls into my gray pigmented resin. Then I started to add the gold leaf flakes into the very center of the molds. Once I was done adding in my gold leaf flakes, I left for a little bit so that when I came back, the total time after mixing was a little over 30 minutes. When I came back, I decided to spread out the gold leaf flakes a little bit, and the reason why I waited is because I'm using a low viscosity resin, and I wanted it to thicken like a high viscosity resin. This wait time will differ depending on the brand of resin that you're using and the work time that's stated on the bottle, as well as the temperature of the room that you're working in. I decided to add some small pieces of broken mirror as well, so I pour some into the cap and carefully place them into the center of the mold with the gold flakes. And I use wooden sticks to adjust their placement. Another factor that can impact how fast or slow your resin heats up depends on how you are holding it. By this I mean I currently have a very small amount of resin in my cup, so it will heat up a lot slower versus if I had the whole cup filled with resin to the top, and that would heat up very quickly. I take my gray pigmented resin and I start to carefully pour it around the edges of the molds. With all of these factors in mind, I probably didn't wait as long as I should have to achieve the effect that I was going for. Here I'm using a wooden stick to spread the pigmented resin. Then I started to pour my pigmented resin in the center, sort of in a spiky flower motion. And here I think I added too much of the pigmented resin, and I probably would have been better off adding it with the wooden stick. You can see on this bottom left mold that a lot of the resin that I poured just went directly to the bottom of the mold. And with my leftover resin, I made a bookmark. And here's a clip of me demolding the coasters the next day. When I saw the coasters like this in the mold, I knew that it wasn't going to turn out the way that I was hoping for. And when I turned them around to look at the back side, I was pretty disappointed. But again, this is all part of making resin art. So if you do mess up from time to time, or even more than time to time, don't be too hard on yourself. At this point, I was pretty certain that these coasters were going to be deemed as a fail and that they wouldn't be used. But then I decided to try something. I decided to grab my Edding gloss paint markers and started off with adding a gold trim. The two coasters that you can see in the back were my experiment to see if I would end up liking how this looked, and I did end up liking it, so here I am doing the other two. I added the gold trim on the edges, and then I started to rotate between the silver marker and the gold marker. And I tried a similar thing on this coaster, but on the top side of the coaster instead of the bottom. I thought that I would go for a mixed match coaster set, 2 of the coasters using the top side and 2 on the bottom. But I did end up liking how the bottom side looked more, so I used the markers on all of the bottom sides of the coasters. Once the marker dried, I got my coasters ready to add a top coat. While I'm mixing in my resin for my top coat, I make sure to repot it, and resin brands will usually suggest that you do this to make sure that there aren't any areas in the cup that weren't mixed well. I wipe my coasters clean by using a paper towel with some alcohol. Then I pour my resin onto my coasters, and I use a silicone makeup brush to spread the resin to the edges. And here's the final product. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. Make sure to follow me on my Instagram, Summer Girl Designs, and my mom's Instagram, Wild Heart Resin Art.